get their heads under there and those long necks. So Easton gave us a little. What's that? He made windows so they stick their head out and they'd get wet. But Johnny, if you would play the next video and let's see what Noah says about it.
This ark is huge. Now, I know there are different kinds of dinosaurs with many varieties within each kind. But the Lord brought to me 2 of every kind of land animal. And there's only about 50 kinds of what you call dinosaurs. So I only needed around 100 of them. Oh, I know what you're thinking. But dinosaurs are so huge. Well, the average-sized dinosaur would only come up to about waist high, and some are as small as chickens. Besides, God didn't have to bring full-grown adults. Young dinosaurs are easier to handle. They eat less, and they live longer to reproduce after they float. Very good question. Anything else?
There was a man that came and talked to our church years ago about this, and he said also that they may have had dinosaur eggs that they took on the ark and that hatched later. So
Yeah. So they could have been pre-born dinosaurs, eggs. Easton had it said they were probably baby dinosaurs, baby giraffes, so they all could fit on there. And Noah gave us a couple other reasons for that too. They didn't eat as much. They didn't poop as much. If JC, our grandson, said that word, he'd be in trouble. But anyway, maybe he's not watching. So there was less cleanup for them. And once they left the ark, being young, it gave them more time to procreate. So by being young, they could have more baby whatevers, and over time, they would replenish the earth with the animals. So thank you to Noah. Thank you to the ark in Kentucky. Those videos are from that experience. So we read Noah in Genesis 6:21 is commanded to take food on the ark. Why did the food not spoil? They're on there for a year, at least a year. Why did the food not spoil? Dried food lasts a long time, exactly. So Noah could have known, understood. God could have shown him how to generate, create, or produce dried food. So it could be dried food they could have had to feed the animals with. Also, if you recall, God fed the Israelites in the wilderness for 40 years, each day with manna and with birds, pheasants, or whatever. So he could have miraculously kept the food from spoiling, just as he delivered food for 40 years. It'd be a lot easier or lesser miracle, you would think, to keep the food from spoiling for a year than it would be to deliver food for 40 years. So that's a possibility as well. So why were 7 pairs of clean animals taken on the ark? Pastor mentioned that last week, I think.
we're hearing the answers back here.
Okay, what did you say? I'm sorry, I can't hear them up here. Sacrifice. So the clean animals were used for sacrifices and possibly also for food as well. They could have eaten some of them after they left the ark too. So why then did God didn't take all the animals on the ark. God only took, again, 7 pairs of clean animals and either 2 or 2 pairs of unclean animals. So why did God allow, quote, innocent animals to be destroyed?
Well, but that's sad to think about.
Jill says it's sad. Would be sad. Why would he allow that?
It didn't say they were innocent. It said that the whole world.
Ah, yeah. So Genesis 6:13 says, Then God said, No, I've decided to put an end to every creature, for the earth is filled with wickedness because of them. Therefore, I am going to destroy them along with the earth. That's the Holman Christian Standard Bible. This verse says, put an end to every creature. So it's possible, or appears to be the case, that the animals were being corrupted by man and were filled with violence, just as man was filled with violence. So animals were made for man, and man has dominion over the animals. So there could have been, this is purely my speculation, there could have been a lot of dog fights, a lot of cockfights, a lot of animal abuse and so forth. A lot of animals could have become violent and destroying the people. So they, as Jeff said, were not innocent. So God is starting over with every creature. So even though there may have been as few as we said earlier, as few as 2,000 or 3,000 animals on the ark, and Noah told us a minute ago, how did Noah round up all these animals and get them on the ark? God brought them. So Noah did not have to round up the animals. God brought the animals to him. So it reminded me of earlier when we were talking about in Genesis, when we were talking about Adam naming the animals. God brought the animals to Adam to name. So I could visualize a big parade of animals to be named. And now we see maybe a second big parade of animals going on to the ark that God brought to Noah. Do you think Noah could have caught all these animals in his own strength? No, I don't think so. Catching even 2,000 or 3,000 animals would have been a huge task. Although he had 120 years, it still would have been a huge task to catch and capture these animals and bring them on the ark. So God takes over. God steps in and takes over when the task is beyond our abilities. God does what we can't. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 9 and 10 says, And he has said to me, My grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, I will rather boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. Therefore, I delight in weaknesses and insults and distresses and persecutions and difficulties in behalf of Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. So again, Noah probably could not have gathered all these animals up, but God steps in, God takes over when the task is too big for us, and God provides strength in our weakness. Okay, Martha, if you would read Genesis chapter 6, verse 22, please.
Thus Noah did according to all that God had commanded him, so he did.
All right, this is a remarkable verse to me. Do you find this verse remarkable? If so, why? Noah didn't question God, he just did it. Certainly. And not only did he not question God, he did it. Read the verse again, Mark.
Thus Noah did according to all that God had commanded him, so he did.
God, it says, did everything that Noah did everything that God had commanded him. So Noah was totally, completely obedient and faithful, even when he was surrounded in a world of wickedness and evil. Noah obeyed. Noah was faithful. So how often are we totally, completely faithful and obedient to God? So as I thought about that, I'm afraid that many times that I'm not totally, completely obedient and faithful. So thankfully, though we have a Savior that has sacrificed on the cross for us so that our past, present, and future sins are forgiven. Even if we're unfaithful, we're disobedient, God, if we ask for forgiveness, forgives us. So, all right, Martha, read the first verse of Genesis chapter 7, please.
Then the Lord said to Noah, enter the ark, you and all your household, for you alone I have seen to be righteous before me in this time.
All right, so the pastor touched on this a little bit last week too, and the New International Version says, go into the ark. The New King James Version says, come into the ark. And the New American Standard Bible says, enter the ark. So God invites Noah and his family to go in, to come into, to enter the ark. So this is a beautiful picture of salvation. Noah and his family are invited by God to enter the one door of the ark, as sinners are invited to enter the one door of salvation, Jesus. So the point is, enter the door now. If you've not already entered, I suspect all of us here have entered that door, but if not, enter that door now. And you might recall in an earlier lesson I mentioned that when Martha and I visited Hilton Head, we have been recently attending a church called the North Island Baptist Church. And there on this past July the 10th, we attended, and the pastor, his name is Dr. Charles Kessler, he had a message entitled The Door. And he used John chapter 10, verses 1 through 9, as his focal verses for his sermon that morning. So he made, as any good pastor, good Baptist preacher would, he made 3 points in his sermon. And his 3 points were, first, and this is in your handout, the door Jesus brings what? S-A. Salvation. So he made the point, Pastor Kessler made the point, that the door is a barrier. It separates. Jesus, as the door, lets believers in. And as John 10:1, Martha, read John 10:1, please.
Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter by the door into the fold of the sheep, but climbs up some other way, he is a thief and a robber.
So this door allowed Noah to enter, but it also kept the wicked, the evil people out when God shut the door. So I never really thought about the door being a barrier. But the door is a barrier. It keeps the evil, sinful people out, just as it lets believers, faithful, obedient people in. So we've got to make a choice to enter that door or not enter that door. The door is open to all, but we've got to choose to come in. One day, the door, just like the door on the ark, will close and there will be no more opportunity to enter. One day, the door on salvation for this world will close and there will be no more opportunity. So by Noah's accepting God's invitation to enter the ark, did the storm not happen outside? What's that, Jill? It did happen outside. So the storm, I think if Pastor and I were talking this week, we think the storm was a very violent storm. Could have created earthquakes and tsunamis and so forth. It would not have been a cruise ship type ride, we don't suspect. Suspect it had been a very rocky ride as such. And so we're not promised, even if we enter the door, that we'll be free from storms in our lives. So we are promised, though, that Jesus, just as the ark carried Noah through the storm, Jesus, as our ark, will carry us through the storms of life that we face. All right, number 2, the door brings S-E, security. Thank you, Nancy. The door brings security. So Noah and his family, after entering the ark, were secure from the flood. The salvation of believers, after we enter the door being Jesus, we're secure. Our salvation is then security, the security of the believer. John 10, 27 through 30, Jesus says, "My sheep listen to my voice, and I know them, and they follow me, and I give them eternal life, and they will never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hand. My Father who has given them to me is greater than all, and no one is able to snatch them out of the Father's hand. I and the Father are one." So the door brings salvation, the door brings security, the door brings something in life. Satisfaction in life. Thank you, Jill. So Noah and his family's needs were satisfied in the ark. As believers, we can have life, and we can have life abundantly, as we're told in John chapter 10, verse 10. So again, the door brings salvation, it brings security, it brings satisfaction. All right, Martha, if you would read Genesis chapter 7, verses 4 and 5, please.
For after 7 more days I will send rain on the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and I will blot out from the face of the land every living thing that I've made. Noah did according to all that the Lord had commanded him.
All right, so how did Noah know when to go into the ark, enter the ark?
When God told him,
When God told him, what did God tell him?
enter the ark.
He told him to enter the ark, but when? 7 days. And 7 days to enter the ark because the rain will begin. So some people believe there not yet been rain on the earth. So if that were the case, Noah may not even have realized the importance of what God was telling him if he'd never seen rain before. So, but again, being obedient and faithful, Noah enters the ark. So how else would Noah have known it was time to enter the ark other than God specifically telling him? I think the pastor may have mentioned this one. Yeah, I think the pastor mentioned it. Said the animals had all been delivered. Instead of FedEx, it was GodX. GodX delivered all the animals, right? So why did God give Noah a 7-day alert to come into the ark? 7-day notice. Could be for last-minute preparations, complete the kind of final phase of loading the ark, getting everything ready. It's like maybe if you built a house, you've got a punch list. You go over the kind of the last few things to be done to make sure everything had been done. So it could have been Noah was given 7 days to go through his punch list as such for the final to-do list as such of entering the ark. That's certainly one possible reason. What else?
Spiritual cleansing.
I'm sorry?
Spiritual cleansing.
Spiritual cleansing. What do you mean by that, Jeff?
While it had not been set out in the Mosaic law yet, there still is the belief that you had to go through a period of preparing yourself to enter into a holiness.
Okay. Jeff says that even though the Mosaic law had not been put in place yet, that it could be that Noah realized there had to be a time for spiritual cleansing, a time of preparation, spiritual preparation. So that 7 days could have provided that time. Yeah. Go finish, Jeff, and then we'll go back there.
I think that the reason for the 7 probably is tied to creation, because his work is finished and now we need rest.
Yeah. So Jeff says the number 7 is, remember, it kind of reminds us of creation, the 7 days of creation. The 7th day God rested, so 6 days of work, 7th day to rest. Karen, what did you say? I'm sorry. Had to do what with his family? Oh, he had to kind of coordinate with his family, get them all in place, probably give them their assignments and so forth, what they're going to do on the ark, because they had to work on the ark. It didn't all just happen. Martha, you're going to say something?
Well,
No.
I kind of looked at the lesson.
Oh, yeah, she gets to review all the lessons in advance, so sometimes she gives hey, how did she know that answer? Well, she got it early. Okay. Anybody else before you give the answer? All these are good responses. certainly could be possibilities. Anybody else? All right, Martha, go for it.
Well, I don't know whether this is the answer to that question or not, but, but didn't you say something about mourning Methuselah?
Yeah, so when did Methuselah die? He died at least the year of the flood, and some people believe that Methuselah died 7 days before the flood came, and this was a time of mourning Methuselah's death. So if you go back and calculate, we won't go through the math of the calculation, but if you look at it, we know from the years of life and birth and death that were given in these verses in Genesis that this was the year that Methuselah died. So it could be this mourning period for Methuselah. Will you remember what Methuselah's name means? When he dies, it will come. When he dies, it will come. So what do you think it is then? Possibly the flood. So that could be Methuselah's name has given us an indication of what could have happened. So it could have been another way that God could have given a warning to Noah and his family that Methuselah has died, so it is coming. And so it could be an alert for him when Methuselah died. All right, anything else? Some people believe this could be a test of Noah's faith. Again, if you think about it, he's been building on this ark for 120 years, or maybe not actually building, but he's been preparing for this time to come for 120 years. So this last 7 days, it could be, and we're told it was a day just like every other day. The birds could be singing, the sun could be shining, and God says, Noah, go into this ark. And Noah thinks, it's stinky in there. All those animals have just come. Stinky and it's cramped. It could be a test of Noah's faith. Was he going to continue to be faithful and obedient? And obviously he was. But also, conversely to that, it could be 7 more days of grace for people on earth. We could kind of visualize or imagine maybe Noah could be standing at the door of the ark, still preaching, as we said, asking people to join him and his family to come into the ark and join them to be saved. So anyway, those are some reasons that maybe this 7-day notice is given. Genesis 7:5 says, so Noah acted in accordance with everything the Lord had commanded him. This verse, Genesis 7:5, is repeated in Genesis chapter 6, verse 22. And this repetition of this verse that Noah did everything that God had commanded him to do it just emphasizes the faithfulness and obedience of Noah in following God's commands. And Noah, we know, devoted 120 years to building something he'd never seen, as we talked about, a vessel half the size of an ocean liner, to protect him from something he may never had experienced, rain or a flood. So he was faithful and obedient in everything God had asked him to do. And again, the rhetorical question for us, are we pursuing our ministry as faithfully and persistently as Noah did his? Is our faith a faith that works as Noah's did? Okay, so why did people refuse to recognize God's authority in Noah's day? Same reason they refuse it today. Jill says they're wicked. Certainly they're just evil people and could refuse. What other reasons? You're exactly right, Jill. Same reason as people today. So what other reasons people give today they're not going to be obedient to God? Pride certainly is there. Prideful.
They're just busy and they don't want to give time to God.
Busy and don't want to give time to God, certainly. I think, again, it could have been a beautiful sunny day out there, the birds could be singing and so forth, and people say, well, I'll just do it tomorrow. Don't people sometimes think that today? I'll just follow God tomorrow. I've got plenty of time, I'll just do it tomorrow. So, or possibly they could be thinking like some people think today, God is a loving God. He will not punish people. He's a loving God. So God is a loving God, as Pastor, I think, talked a little bit about last week. God is a loving God, but He's also a righteous God, and He can't allow for sin to persist.
Some people just simply don't believe.
Some people just simply don't believe. They just don't accept it. You got atheists. They just don't believe there is a God. So it's probably the same today as it was then, or same then as it is today.
Or they have another God.
Or they have another God, and Jill said pride, the other God may be themselves, or it could be some other type of God, Allah or whoever, so, or whatever. Okay. Why is we spend a lot of time on Noah and the ark and the flood? Why is this important? Why are we spending so much time on this? Don't know? You're saying, why are we spending so much time on this? Wait, no thoughts? Gives us a picture of what Christ did for us, certainly. So again, with the ark being a type of Christ, it gives us a picture, a view of Christ. Certainly, good. Thank you, Novella. Anything else? Did you know that Noah's name is mentioned 51 times in the Bible? 43 of those times is in the Old Testament, 8 times is in the New Testament. So if God, inspiring the Bible, His holy word, mentions Noah 51 times, you think it might be important? Yeah, I didn't compare it to anybody else's name, but that's a lot of times to be mentioned. So I think, just for no other reason, if God mentions it that many times in inspiring the Bible, it's got to be important.
It answers a lot of questions, too, especially if you might be an archaeologist or a paleontologist, or you have questions about why the earth is like it is, and how the continents look like they fit together, and it's a historical account.
Yeah, scientists who believe in creation can draw a lot of knowledge from the study of Noah and the ark and why things are as they are in the world today. Yeah, very good, Mara. Thank you. Noah is prominently mentioned in the Hebrews Faith Hall of Fame. So just as the ark is a type of salvation, a type of Christ, Noah could be similar to what Novella said. Noah could be a example to us for how to live faithfully, how to live obediently. So I think for all those reasons, it's Noah and his life is important to us and to understand this time of the flood. So how could God, we talked about how God could kill innocent animals. Maybe they probably weren't innocent, but how could God kill the innocent children in the flood? They didn't do anything wrong.
No, but they were going to grow up in
Yeah.
that atmosphere and become wicked.
Martha says they're going to grow up in that atmosphere and become wicked. So, a lot of time, if they were going to grow up in that atmosphere and become wicked and evil, what do you think about God's decision to kill them as children? We're all born sinners.
We were born in the image of Adam. He was the only one who had to commit a sin to become a sinner. After that, we all are born as sinners because we're born in the image of God.
Yeah, we're all born sinners, so Nancy's saying, so all these children had the seed of sin in them because of Adam.
But before they were old enough to understand, it didn't give them time to reject God.
Yeah, so there is some age, indeterminate age of accountability. So some of these children could be under the age of accountability, so it really could have been merciful for them because they did not have to grow up in that atmosphere, and God saved them eternally. Secondly, some people think that, well, not think, this is probably true, that children are usually the first to suffer negative consequences by evil, wicked people. Think about it. Abortion, abuse of children, even, I think most likely, as we see later, child sacrifice. All of these things could be going on. So it might not have been a lot of children to begin with. Or God could be taking some of them out of the environment they were having to live in. So again, it could have been a merciful God in doing this for those who are, again, not reached what we've termed the age of accountability. All right, we know that Noah, after leaving the ark, was a farmer. Genesis 9:20 tells us that. So how did he have the expertise to build the ark? He followed what God told him to do. God could have given him specific plans of how to build it. We don't not told that. We could, but God could have given me specific plans how to build an ark, and maybe I could do it with the specific plans, but I don't think so. But if you know my building skills, yeah, but that could be. It could have been God inspired Noah miraculously so he could do this. But this is a big boat. He did have some sons and daughters-in-law and a wife to help him. What else?
Did it take 160 years to build it, something like that?
120. Well, 120 from the time he heard about it to the time it was built, so it could be, he may not have taken every year.
So there could be a little trial and error.
Yeah, he could have had trial and error, certainly. Yeah. So, what else? You know, we might have could have hired some of those other people, those wicked, evil people. They probably were still interested in making some money, right? So there could have been, we know there were craftsmen at that time. In the line of Cain, we are told, you know, there were metal workers and other craftsmen, musicians, and so forth. So they had skills, so Noah could have had resources, or God could have provided resources that he could have hired other people to help him in the construction of building this ark. Even those people might have thought, well, that crazy Noah, what's he doing building this big boat out in the middle of nowhere? Those people still might have accepted his wages and worked on building the ark. So that could have been an answer. So yeah, Noah could have hired them for the purpose of not only helping to build, but an opportunity to tell them about God, right? To try to preach to them, to try to convert them as well. He wasn't successful in that sense, but that could have been part of his efforts there. Good point, Jill. Not thought about that. All right, so we're about to wrap up this lesson today. We didn't get to some, if you remember way back, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, some of the questions that we did not get to today, but we're going to get there in future lesson. Well, was there an ice age? We didn't answer that yet, so we will. Did the dinosaurs eat the other animals on the ark? We kind of answered that one, but we'll get to it further. How could Noah and his family care for all the animals on the ark? We kind of talk about that. They had to work. These animals didn't feed themselves as such. So those and some other questions we still got to get to, we will. So in closing today's lesson, we're a little bit early, that's good news. So what principles of faithfulness and obedience do we learn from Noah? What are some of the lessons we learned from Noah thus far?
Tremendous faithfulness, because most of us would have given up. Not one person accepted the message.
Yeah. So not one outside his family accepted the message, did he? But Noah persisted. Noah was persistent in his faithfulness and his obedience. But I'd got to think, again, we're not specifically told this, but I got to think that Noah did have influence in his own family. That without Noah, maybe, particularly those daughter-in-laws, might have said, well, this guy's crazy. I'm not sticking around for this. But I think Noah influenced at least his family members. And again, as we've talked about, I think maybe that's our first responsibility as well, to influence our family members for God. But he certainly was persistent. Noah tried, as Stan said, for 120 years to influence other people on earth. All right, what else? It's good. Patience. Noah was patient. He worked on this for 120 years to some extent. And we don't know exactly when, he was actually building, when he was planning or whatever, but for 120 years, he was patient and be obedient to God, thinking about, God, when's this going to happen? So God didn't tell him on the front end that it was going to be 120 years. He didn't know that. So, all right, what else? Okay.
To obey even if you don't know all the details.
Say that again, Nancy.
It's good to obey even if you don't know all the details.
Yeah. Nancy said it's good to be obedient even when you don't know all the details. How long did it take Noah to be obedient?
Immediately.
Yeah. Noah immediately responded with faith. He was immediately obedient. So I think the message to us also, when we're given a ministry or a task, we're called to do it immediately. So Noah could possibly have never seen rain, could possibly have never seen a flood. Different people disagree on that, but it's possible that he never seen either one of them. But even though he had not seen those, Noah was still faithful. Noah was still obedient. He was an example or exemplified that faith is substance of things unseen. He'd not seen that. It's practical. Noah is an example of the practicality of faith. He built an ark that was very practical to save he and his family. So faith is sometimes very practical in what God calls us to do. And even though Noah was not given all the details, as Nancy said, the details that God did give him, Noah, I think, followed to the smallest degree. It says the width, the height, the length of the ark, Noah built it just as God told him to do. So he was faithful in the details he was given. Let's see.
Tom mentioned that Noah is listed.
Mm-hmm.
Is listed in the Hall of Fame of Faith. Hebrews 11.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never noticed this until, I'm glad you mentioned it, I've never noticed this until this morning. So in Hebrews 11, verse 7, it says, in reverence, prepared an ark. So Noah is a model of what it is to be reverent before God, to fear God.
Yeah, Stan said that in Hebrews it says Noah built the ark in reverence. So Noah also exemplifies what we should do in relationship with God. We should be reverent with God, reverent to God.
And he was an example to the Jewish people of what would happen if they followed. You can look back at, because of, even in Hebrews he's listed, but you can look back at leaders even in our country, and what they meant and how they worked things out, you know,
Yeah.
and so he's an example to his people.
Noah's an example of leadership to his family and to his subsequent generations, that he was a leader and he followed God's direction in being a leader, Martha said. All right, Johnny, will you put up that last picture, please? Y'all not going to be able to actually read this, but this is everything I need to know about life I learned from Noah's Ark, and this is, you know, kind of funny. There's a woodpecker building on, punching holes into the side of the ark, and Noah's reaching over trying to catch him with a net. I'm not sure what the two squirrels are doing there on the side, but they're doing something. I couldn't see it well enough. But everything we need to know, I think this is really kind of a good little, what's the right word here? Listing of things that we learn from Noah's Ark. So the first is, don't miss the boat. Number 2, remember that we're all in the same boat. Number 3, plan ahead. It wasn't, this author thinks, it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. Number 4, stay fit. When you're 600 years old, someone may ask you to do something really big. So, number 5, don't listen to critics. Just get on with the job that needs to be done. Number 6, build your future on high ground. Number 7, for safety's sakes, travel in pairs. Number 8, speed isn't always an advantage. The snails were on board with the cheetahs. Number 9, when you're stressed, float a while. And number 10, remember the ark was built by amateurs, the Titanic by professionals. And then number 11, no matter the storm, when you are with God, there's always a rainbow waiting. So I just thought it was a good, kind of neat little list of things to remember about Noah's Ark. So with that, thank you for being here. We'll continue next week, pick up with verse 6 in chapter 7, and go through verse 24. I don't know if we'll get it all done next week, but we'll get started on that. So again, thank you for being here. Have a blessed week.